Well, today is a very special day in my life. Today, June 6th, is the 16th anniversary of my first date with Kevin.
Really?
Wow, is that right? Where did you go?
Yep.
Do you remember where you went? Did you go somewhere?
Well, we had a very unconventional first date because we were pretty into each other and we were trying to figure out, like who was going to make the first move. And I was actually at a conference for work. And he called me and he was like, you want to go out? You want to do something? I'm like, oh, I can't. I'm at this conference, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, do you have to stay? Oh, I have to stay till at least, I got to get through dinner. So he picked me up at the conference at like 8 o'clock that night. And we went out and to like this wilderness kind of area and threw down a blanket and had a bottle of wine and looked at the stars and talked for like 4 hours. And
Wow.
yeah, so it was a very
Wow.
unconventional first date. But I said to him, and he should have, you know what? When I said this to him, he should have been paying more attention to what I was saying instead of what I was wearing and gotten out right then and saved himself. Because here's what I said to him. I said, you should be so flattered because typically I would not go into the woods at night with a man I don't really know because I'd assume he
I
was a
was going to say.
murderer.
Yeah. That's
Now,
all I was thinking when you described it
yeah,
after having known you for so long. The idea of you doing
yeah.
that is
Oh, yeah.
bizarre.
That's how hot he was. That's how hot he was. So I was like, I would just assume that you're a murderer and that you're going to like try to wear my skin. And what he should have done right then is he should have stopped and he should have analyzed that and realized that if he continued to be with this woman, his life was going to be a dystopian hellscape. But you know how it is. Y'all were soft and we smell good and you can't help
Yeah.
yourselves. And here we are 16 years later. Happy anniversary to our first date.
I
That's
wonder
awesome.
what the
And he's
percentage of married people is who reflect on if I had only known the way
oh,
my
I think
life
it's
would have
high.
turned
Yeah.
out. You think it's
Let
high? Do you really?
I do. So let me give you a perfect example of what I mean. So last night it's like 8:30, 9 o'clock, and we're sitting on the couch and I said, Kev, let me ask you a question. And he goes, ask me anything. And I was like, when you were a kid, which celebrity would show up at the door on TV commercials holding a great big winning check from the Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes? And you feel free to answer that. Which celebrity would show up on those TV commercials with the great big check for Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes? Do you know?
I do.
Me?
Lamar, Max?
Oh, I
Yeah,
do. Oh,
Oh,
answer it.
absolutely. I
Ed
know.
Ed Mc,
100%.
Ed Ed
Ed
McMahon and Dick
McMahon.
Clark.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah, that's what Kevin said. And I was like, yeah, well, why don't you try Googling that? Because you'll find that it wasn't Ed McMahon and that you and everyone your age and 15 years younger than you believes that Ed McMahon was the Publishers Clearinghouse guy. And he was. But now they're saying that he wasn't. Just like the Berenstain Bears are now called the Berenstain Bears. That's a little something called the Mandela effect because we flip timelines and we're in a different reality than the one you were born in. And he looked at me.
He should have
He
known
looked at
then.
me. He looked at me,
Yeah.
and you know what that man said? That man said, "Woman, I am too tired for this right now, but I'm going to investigate this tomorrow and we'll continue this conversation." What did you say that is? I said, the Mandela effect. Reality is a simulation. We change timelines. It used to be the Berenstain Bears. Now it's the Berenstain Bears. Used to be Ed McMahon. Now they say it's not. There used to be a cornucopia with the Fruit of the Loom underwear logo. Now there isn't. And he looked at me for the longest time and he said, how did I get here? And I said, well, tomorrow it'll be the 16th anniversary of our first date. And your hormones are what drove you here, buddy.
Bob and Sheri books, swag, and the mother of all mothers merch. Just hit shop at bobandsheri.com.
You could win a $600 Visa gift card to celebrate your dad. Just go to bobandsheri.com and enter our Meet My Dad contest.
Curveball questions hiring managers like to ask prospective employees. So, it's that really uncomfortable interview moment. And they'll talk about what's your education, what are your dreams, blah, blah, blah. And then they throw you this curveball. And it might be something like, if you could have dinner with anybody in the world, who would it be? If you were an animal, which animal would it be? If you were a tree, those things that are so annoying. But one of them was kind of interesting. And I thought about it for a moment. The question is, tell me about a time when something in your life did not go as you wanted or expected, and you turned it into something positive. What was it? And for me, I mean, the big one would be I left television, my television career. I felt it was going to come to an end, and I returned to radio. And they put me together with a guy as, you got to have somebody else. Otherwise, it's just you talking in morning drive, and no one wants to hear that. But the guy they put me together was a nice guy. He just was not somebody that was good for me. Well, he had different skills, and we just never clicked. And I was irritated that happened. And then they brought me 2 or 3 other people. And I became so angry that they were trying to fit the wrong sort of person to work with me. I remember one day I drop kicked a trash can down the hall of the radio station. I was just so angry because I could not get the audience behind me. I could not get the ratings up, and I hated coming in every day working with people I didn't really enjoy being with. And then all of a sudden, I met Sheri, and within, I don't know, it had to be probably 2 months, everything turned around. Everything turned around, and my life became better. I became more prosperous, and it was a time where I just turned things around by just staying with it and saying, I'm not going to settle for second best.
I think questions like that are I don't love those in job interviews, even though you can learn a lot about a person from their answer. And thank you, Bob, for your very kind words. I can't think of very many men who said, and then I met Sheri and things got better. So I'm loving that. I'm gonna
that's
have that
a perfect
etched in
example,
bronze.
though. That got a laugh. It was self-deprecating, but it got a laugh. So it showed that I was right and I was telling the truth.
I mean, if I'm in a job interview and you ask me that question and I respond with, well, I guess it was when I was 12 and my mom left and my dad became a drug dealer, and I realized that if I was going to have any kind of a life at all, it was entirely up to me. That brings
Right.
the room down. That brings the room down. And the other person has nowhere to go with that, So
Yeah, that's
I
very
know what
true.
they're-
That's a dead end. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm so sorry for answering your question. What they want to hear is, I was working on a big important project, and suddenly the bottom fell out of our budget, and we had to completely retool it and regroup it. But we used our dynamic synergies because we're a family here, and there's no I in team. That's what they want to hear, is some BS crap about work. They really don't want to hear like some devastating gut punch about your life. I don't think.
No, you're right.
You?
Until
No.
I heard Bob's story, I didn't think about this. I've got a story. I was on a truck. I'd been on a beer truck since the late 70s. I worked for Schlitz. I worked for Miller. Went to work for Budweiser. And so one day there was an opening for a supervisor that would be over some routes. And me and one of my best friends that we eat breakfast every morning together, we were both up for that. And so I went in, and the guy that owns the place, he goes, everything's great. He said, here's the deal. And this other guy had been there a good many years, longer than I had. And he said, we've decided to give it to this guy. And I said, hey, that's a great choice. I hope he's, my boss. I said, that was fantastic. Because in my head, I'm going, this is where you do the lag putt. You didn't get it, but you want to leave it positive.
Yeah.
You don't want it to be a bad experience for him. So I was a little disappointed. But then, like a month later, he calls me back in, and we've done something. He says, I'm going to, do you want to be the facilities manager? And I'm thinking, well, this is ridiculous. I'm a salesman. What are you talking about? I've been doing this forever. I've won every no, I don't want to be stuck in a place. I want to be out with the people. But we talked about it, and Everything sounded pretty decent money wise, whatever. And I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. And had I not done that, I wouldn't have been stationary to where I could listen to this crazy show. I would have been out and about and I wouldn't have time to listen. And I wouldn't have connected with this show. And I wouldn't have spent 29 years calling into this show. And here I sit.